Brayden Burries announced his presence with that emphatic dunk in the second half and a 20-piece tonight. And that Brayden Burries is here to stay. And if so, watch out, world.
You are Locked On Wildcats, your daily podcast on the Arizona Wildcats. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello and welcome into Locked On Wildcats, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, now the #1 sports podcast network around. I'm your host, Leif Thulin, your resident college basketball guru, stats nerd, point guard by game, and ball knower by trade, and I'm excited to talk Arizona hoops with you today. Today's episode is brought to you by FanDuel. Right now, new customers can bet just $5, and if your bet wins, you'll get $300 in bonus bets to use across the app, so download the app today. And on the show today, I'll react to Arizona's most recent win over Denver, discuss the keys to the game, how Arizona fared in according to my keys I laid out prior to the game, discuss the AP ranking of Arizona being ranked number 2 behind Purdue. Is that right or wrong? And does Arizona have a chance at a 5-star out of the blue? All that and more right ahead on Locked On Wildcats. So let's dive right in. Brayden Burries was the guy we wanted to show up and break free of the monkey on his back. Those weight of the world was on his shoulders. And you could tell at each of the last couple games, there's been an emphasis on establishing Brayden Burries early in the game, trying to get him involved so he feels better. He hit a 3 to open the game against UCLA, and it was like, oh, Brayden Burries is here. And then he struggled the rest of the game. He hit a 3 against UConn, or he got into rhythm against a few of these other teams in the non-conference bye games. And you said, okay, well, the Utah Tech game, like, let's get Brayden Burries after a bad game against Florida. He had 18, but it was unconvincing on 16 shots. Then against Northern Arizona, there was a concerted effort to still play through Buries, and there was mixed results. Today, there was a concerted effort and an aggression that had not been there. Brayden Burries broke free of his chains, got the monkey off his back, and he did it. He did it through sheer aggression early, hitting a 3 early in this game, getting to the free throw line. By the way, he only went 3 of 7 from the free throw line. And that guy's probably kicking himself so much because my guess, seeing the way he shoots, is that he's shot 90% from the free throw line for years and gets to the line and it's like, okay, it's over. But there's just so much on his plate, so much thinking going on. And I believe his smile, just the sheer emotion of that smile, the relief in his eyes after that thunderous dunk where he postered a Denver defender driving on the right baseline in the second half, and he looked like a player proud of his fantastic play, but more importantly, a young man relieved of immense pressure, believing he belongs. There's been this internal question on his head the whole time, like, am I really good enough to do what I've thought I've been able to do, what everyone expects me to do for a team that should be number 1 in the country based on resume, yet I haven't played my part. And you wonder if all those questions about, okay, like, how are you going to pick up the pace and figure your role out here? Because myself and many others outlined a future where Brayden Burries is the 3rd leading scorer on this team. I still think it's possible. He's 3rd in field goal attempts, and that would indicate he's 3rd in the hierarchy that they expected in terms of scoring. And I still think that's very possible. I still think he's a better scorer than Anthony Del Orso, who entered the game 3rd in points. I still think he'll get there. But he had to believe it and see the ball go through the hoop. You always hear that expression like, oh, you just got to see one go through. Well, he needed one to go through in the worst way. And he's been used to being great his whole life. And now he's faced pressure and adversity for the entire season that is new to any freshman. And he just looked stressed all season. After his first poor game against Florida, where he looked super sped up, and there was no signs of excellence in any of the other games, even against Utah Tech, where he scored 18, it looked difficult. He worked hard to do so, and he was keeping a brave face, playing fantastic defense. Kudos to him there. But today was the breakthrough, and if Brayden Burries had his breakthrough, and Arizona already had the best resume in college basketball, already appears like at least one of the top 2 or 3 teams in college basketball, watch out for the world, like I said. We knew Arizona would feature Brayden Burries, but he shined in a big way in this win. And for those of you just joining us, he scored 20 points. He was aggressive throughout, featured early and often, had 20 points on 7 of 13 shooting, hit 3 threes, had 7 rebounds, 4 assists, played athletically, played confidently, missed some free throws, missed some bunnies, but the weight of the world looked lifted off of his shoulders after throwing down that monstrous dunk. And then he hit a 3, and you could just see this ease of the tension that had been on his visage for the first 6 games of the season up to that point. The ramifications of this down the road are massive, monumental, because this is what we talked about, the biggest growth area for this team. This team now has even more options and more space to work around for them to dominate further on the interior like they do. I've said this 1,000 times. They know where their bread is buttered. It's on the interior with Mo Krivas, Toby Awaka, Koa Pete, and Jaden Bradley dicing up teams by getting to the rack in various ways. And now at the threat of Brayden Burries, Ivan Karchenkov, who also had 20 points, Dwayne Aristotle had 17, to space and pitch in and help offensively for those guys, adding more space, but also providing a layer on the scouting report saying, oh, we can't let these guys shoot. We can't be okay with doubling and saying, okay, if these guys beat us, sure. And now that if teams do that, these guys should beat them. And now let's talk about this game, right? So that is the biggest thing that happened. Brayden Burries broke free. He had his breakout game, and I expect a fully more confident and the full representation of what Brayden Burries is for Arizona for the next couple games. And I will be surprised if that does not happen. Arizona won this game 103-73. They broke the century mark for the 18th time in the Tommy Lloyd era. And they looked ultra confident in this game. And they looked ultra confident as a team offensively and defensively. Arizona won. And they won in a way that I think it was more impressive than some of their other non-conference wins because like the other non-conference wins, and I'm speaking of non-conference bye games, not the ones against UCLA, Florida, and UConn. The way that they won was a balanced attack offensively. It was a game in which the defense shined brightly, and it was one where Koa Pete and Jaden Bradley did not have an impact on this game, and that was by design. And therefore, the ancillary pieces stepped up and proved they could do more than they have done so far. The defense was superb. It showed that they can play multiple styles. They pressed, they switched, they played drop coverage, they got in passing lanes, and they were ultra disruptive, but also stout defensively without taking too many risks. And they can do it all because that's how good this defense is. So let's talk about my takeaways. Burries looks better and just needed a day where the ball goes through the hoop, and I think he's had it. That's my first takeaway. I wrote that in the first half. I thought he was getting better. Second half, he threw that on that flush. Ivan Karchenkov was fantastic. He had 20 points as well. The defense can be suffocating. Steals are one way to play defense, and then there's a side of defense where it's you play super conservatively and you don't let teams get easy shots. Think of Virginia, the pack line defense that Tony Bennett popularized. Those teams are really good defensively, and they make it hard to score. There are also teams that make it very hard to score, and they force turnovers, and they cause chaos and make you panic and feel uncomfortable. Arizona can be both. They forced turnovers and got runouts. They led 33-7 at one point in this game, and the first half, in which Koa Pete and Jaden Bradley did not really impact the game, they shot 10 times combined for 12 points, and some of those were later in the half. The Arizona team was able to still score a ton, even while not shooting particularly well from 2 or from 3, with 14 points off of turnovers at half, 14 offensive rebounds at half, 13 fast break points, and 28 of their 56 points, so exactly 50% of their points from within the paint. The next takeaway would be they shot a lot of threes. The rebounding is becoming more and more dominant. They out-rebounded Denver by 21. They had 23 in sum to finish off those stats. They had 23 points off of turnovers, 50 points in the paint, 16 fast break points, 50 rebounds, and 16 second chance points. This is a team that didn't miss a ton, especially in the second half, and they were able to get 20 of their 31 misses. They ended up with the ball in their own hands. That's a really good team offensively, getting extra chances to go after it. And defensively, in the first half, they were incredibly stout. They held a team that is pretty good offensively in Denver and is very prolific shooting the three. In the first half, which is the one that they tried harder defensively, to 8 of 28 shooting, 20% from 3, 2 of 10, bending their shot chart because it's a team that likes to shoot the 3. and also forced 11 turnovers against a team that plays a slow pace. So there weren't that many possessions to generate those turnovers. This is a really good Arizona team, and they may have added the crucial missing piece that seems like they've been missing in some of those big games. They haven't been able to find a third consistent offensive weapon. They may have one in Brayden Burries, just like we thought all along. We'll discuss that and much, much more coming up next on Locked On Wildcats. The NBA is back, and there's no better place to get in on the action than FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Even if you missed the start of the game or want to ride the hot hand, FanDuel has live bets on everything from who will score next to fourth quarter comebacks. Plus, you can even combine your live bets into the same game parlay for a shot at a bigger payout. It keeps every game exciting, especially when your team's making that late push. Right now, FanDuel is giving new customers $300 in bonus bets when your first $5 bet wins. So head to FanDuel.com to sign up and play your game with FanDuel, the official sports betting partner of the NBA. Thank you guys for making Locked On Wildcats your first listen of the day, and thank you for making Locked On the number one sports podcast network. I'm Leif Thulin, and I really appreciate you guys listening both to Postcast and this. I gave a lot of keys to the game, and the keys to beating Denver are not very important because you should beat Denver in whatever way you want to do so. However, the keys that have been achieved against UCLA, UConn, and Florida have proven true. And I think these are keys that are meant in a larger sense. So these are the ones I wrote out for what I wanted to see achieved against Denver because I knew it would be a 30-point or thereabouts type of win. I wanted to see Arizona dominate the glass. They dominated by I said 15 or more. They won by 21. So check mark there. And they're starting to become that team that I thought Arizona would be all along. That is top 15 in rebounding margin, top 15 in offensive rebounding in the entire country. And that's what they're looking like. Tobe Awaka may well be the very best rebounder in the entire country. There are some metrics and analytics that would suggest he is. And Tobe is not alone up there. You're getting rebounds from Buries, 7 off the glass. Koa Pete's incredible on the offensive glass. Mo Krivas looms large at 7'2". My next key was make more threes than Denver, despite likely taking fewer. I went 1 for 2 in this. They did make more threes, and they actually shot fantastically from the second half on, as did Denver, though. Arizona went 41 to 72 from the field, making 12 threes, meaning they went 12 of 28 from there. So Arizona went 29 of 48 from 2 and 12 of 28 from 29 of 44 from 2 and 12 of 28 from 3. So their offense is very good. The second half statistics were even better. And Denver was held to 9 threes made. They only made 2 in the first half, which is really what this game mattered. Arizona only shot 33% in the first half from 3, though. And that, I think, was more realistic than the second half when they got hot and just kind of rode the big lead they established to victory. But they won that battle, so I'll give them credit. They hit 12 threes. That is great. That is building confidence, and they did so at a very high clip. They shot well there, and they shot more threes than Denver, which I think actually, rather than being an experimental thing for Arizona, which it is more of a testament to their defensive ability to disrupt what teams want to do. Teams that want to play Arizona and are thinking they're inferior talent-wise are going to try to shoot more threes because that's their best chance to win because you're not going to outduel them on the glass. You're not going to physically impose your will, especially for these mid-major schools. So you're going to shoot a lot of threes. That's your best chance of upset. Arizona takes away the best chance of upset. They did so against UConn too, which is not thinking upset. They're thinking they should win this game. UConn wanted to shoot more threes. Arizona forced them to bend their shot chart. Their shot diet changed, and they shot mid-range jump shots as one of the more effective ways they scored in the second half of that game. And I thought that Arizona would shoot fewer than 28 threes, but I'm happy to see that they did. My next key, I think, was hitting spades. Establish confidence in Brayden Burries, Ivan Karchenkov, and Dwayne Aristotle. I want to see them combine for 6 threes, I wrote. They combined to make 9 out of 17 threes, and they combined for 57 points between them. Burries and Karchenkov each with 20, Aristotle with 17. Burries, of course, gets the headline of this because we needed Brayden Burries to have that breakout performance. We needed Brayden Burries to believe in himself and think he can score a bunch of baskets in a stretch against good teams by doing it against inferior opponents to build that confidence. I said I expected Burries to lead in field goal attempts. He did. He shot 13 times, followed by Karchenkov's 12 and Aristotle's 11. And I mentioned that I didn't really expect Arizona to get out and run a ton in this game unless they forced a ton of turnovers, got in the passing lanes. And I've said if they can score 20 points off a fast break, that would be a really ideal number. They scored 16 points off of fast breaks and 23 points off of turnovers. So I would say largely all those things played true, and they should in a game where you beat a team by 30 and you could have won by 50. Now, let's touch on what really matters about this game going forward, because not everything does when you play a team that you should beat by 30, that a team you should beat by 45 if you play out the whole way. What does matter is how good defensively Arizona is, how they can play multiple schemes, how they can employ drop coverage, press, they can play man-to-man, they can play switching man-to-man, and they can switch 1 through 5, they can switch 1 through 4. The way that they defended inspired a lot of faith for me, because I think Arizona's got the requisite athleticism and length to control the glass, which is a part of defense, in my opinion. They finish possessions. They can funnel into someone who can block shots, but also make you think better of taking shots, like Mo Krivas. And then they have the athletes that can switch on the perimeter and make you play isolation-based basketball. That's what they did against UCLA. That's how they won the game at the end. What impressed me is the consistency of Arizona's defense when motivated, when truly there's a stake in the game. In that first half, Arizona at a certain point was up by 26 points, and for stretches of time, you couldn't see Denver even looking at the basket. They were just determined to not lose the basketball. They didn't have any actual intention of scoring. It was more like, okay, let's preserve possession here and not let Arizona get out and run. Arizona was stealing the ball in the full court, stealing the ball in the back court. They could rebound the ball and run. And you see this intensity that I think proved that Arizona's defense right now is better than their offense, which is something that is foreign to Tommy Lloyd, but I'm sure he's thrilled about. Arizona offensively in the 4 years of Tommy Lloyd has been top 15 all of those years, top 11 3 of the 4 years. This is a guy that thrives offensively because of the repeatability of scoring on the interior. And when they shoot well from 3, that's gravy. But defense has been iffy. Tempo has been something that's been quick. Right now, the tempo doesn't need to be quick because of the defensive ability for Arizona, even in the half court, is so good that Arizona's offensive ability in the half court is also very good. And when you can play well in the half court, you don't even need to get out and run. Now, if you can, because of the defense, it's even better. But the defense being so good allows Arizona to win the games that they previously lost against teams that slowed it down. The losses against Princeton, against Clemson, against Houston in the NCAA tournament that plague Arizona fans' memories of these seasons that were vastly and overwhelmingly successful until then, are all plagued by the idea of playing slowly and being beaten by teams that can match you physically. Arizona is hard to match physically this year, but I think their defensive identity is what makes them even more dangerous. And then the other thing to take away is if the trio of freshmen that control the most area of growth for Arizona, the trio that combined for 57 points today, can be half as good as they were today in games against better competition. And I'm not saying half as many points, but half as good in terms of as impactful to the game and the script of the game. Arizona goes from a team that already could be the number 1 team in the country to a team that should be the number 1 team in the country later in the year. That should be a number 1 seed and capable of lifting a trophy, capable of raising a banner in April, because of they have the offensive capabilities to be great on the first shot. They can get second chances. They can score inside. They can score outside. And defensively, they're great. Right now, they're top 10 in both KenPom offense and defense, and rebounding is starting to become dominant. This is a team that I kind of thought was going to be very good on offense. And my big question was, can they play a really good defensive brand of basketball while playing as quickly as I thought? Well, so be it. If they don't play as quickly as I thought, well, I'll own that. I'm not sure I'm going to be wrong because there's a lot of season left. But if I am, but Arizona's defense is better than I thought, that's a better recipe than playing quickly and not having as good a defense. Tommy Lloyd would far rather what's actually happening than my prediction in that. And that is what matters. Next up, I want to talk about the ranking why Arizona should be one, even though Purdue has a good claim at one and are one. How can Arizona claim one? And also, are they finding themselves a 5-star out of thin air? Because I think there's a possibility they may have found a 5-star that will be heading to Tucson. We'll touch on that next on Locked On Wildcats. Welcome back to Locked On Wildcats. Leif Thulin with you here. Thank you for making Locked On Wildcats your first listen of the day, and thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network. I told you guys about my belief in Arizona and how I believed they could be a team that is capable of being a top 3 team in the country within the first couple weeks of the season. That has been accomplished. I mentioned that I think Arizona will be number 1 by January because I thought they would go 12-1 or 11-2, perhaps even undefeated in non-conference, beating teams like Arizona, UConn, like UCLA, and like Florida. And then Arizona having a marquee brand and going to play teams like Alabama, Auburn, and San Diego State, we still have yet to play, and then playing the Big 12 certainly has a chance to be number 1 if they start as well in the Big 12 as I foresee them doing. That was my pitch. They're ahead of schedule there. I told you what mattered about the defense being as good as they are, being well ahead of what I anticipated, probably ahead of what Tommy Lloyd even anticipated, being top 10 defensively and winning games at a slow pace with one of their crucial key members anticipated to be the 3rd leading scorer of the team starting slowly, with 3-point shooting combining for 3.3 threes per game and winning all of those games against top 12 preseason teams. Number 3, number 4, number 12 preseason. And Arizona won all of them. And one of them a true road game, one of them basically a road game, and the other more of a home game than not. But none of them at McHale. And if you told Tommy Lloyd that, he'd be overjoyed. They're 6-0 and deserve to be a top 2 team in the country. Let's talk about why they are number 2. Purdue beat Texas Tech, who is number 15. Preseason, we're top 10 by 30. But Texas Tech looked terrible. They looked absolutely awful against a good team. A good team in Wake Forest, but they're not a great team. And you can't look bad in that situation. You can look okay, but you cannot look bad. You cannot look like a team that should lose that game. And they ended up winning it. They also didn't look very good against Illinois. And they have 2 All-American caliber players, but their wings aren't helpful. Their chemistry does not seem to be right. And Christian Anderson is being forced to decide between scoring the basketball or distributing. There's no middle ground because no one else is helping him distribute. And so he cannot do what he does naturally, which is put pressure on as a scorer. That is dangerous, and that's problematic. Christian Anderson controls how good Texas Tech can be, but what really controls how good Texas Tech can be is the complementary pieces. Purdue knew that. They have a formula. Purdue has 2 returning All-Americans, one that are established and already All-Americans, and they have better ancillary pieces that star in their roles, and one that will be all Big Ten, all conference in Fletcher Lawyer. Other guys that have been all conference in other leagues, and they're really good. But their best win, Alabama, was a very good one, but they dominated the one weakness Alabama has is size and rebounding. Purdue dominated. Their point guard, Brayden Smith, front runner for National Player of the Year, had more rebounds than Alabama's front court put together. They dominated the one weakness there. And then they played a team that is overrated right now in Texas Tech. Texas Tech may be very good down the road, but they're not right now. And that matters. And so Arizona has beaten teams. In UConn, they were injured. But Florida, who I don't think is as great, but analytically are still ranked higher than Arizona. And UCLA, who is one of the better defensive teams and one of the rivals of Arizona. Arizona, resume-wise, I think Purdue would even say is better. Purdue would even give the favor to Arizona. Arizona has the better wins, but they did not start as high in the poll because Purdue started at 1. Purdue has more emphatic victories, and that's all right. But if you're looking at who has played better in big games, Purdue's got a claim, but they've also only beaten bye games by 10 at times. I think that there's a real pitch that Arizona should be one, and more people should have voted for them there. Doesn't matter that much now. We'll see in a couple weeks. That does matter. Next, I'm going to tell you about the newest recruit that Arizona may find their way to landing that could change the next recruiting class. That answer is a reclassification, and those have been kind to Arizona. They got a guy named DeAndre Ayton who happened to go number one in the class and number one in the NBA, and he was number one player in that class. That was a reclassification. Marvin Bagley also reclassified that year, and he went to Duke, and he ended up being the number two pick. The guy that those two preceded is named Luka Doncic, so they are looked at in that statistic not favorably. However, when you're really good and you reclassify, it hasn't really hurt teams. Essentially, when you're good, you're really good. And when you're really good, you know it. And it doesn't matter when you partake in college basketball because you're great. Cooper Flag just did the same thing. There's a fellow by the name of Brian Branch, and he could be great. And he is a top recruit, and there's a chance for Arizona to nab him. I'm not going to tell you, oh, we're going to get him and get you guys to be excited and say, oh, like you said that we'd get Cam Williams. No, I never said that. I said there's a chance you get him because he's from Phoenix. However, the track record for him was vastly in favor of following the one and done path. I said Koa Pete's a really good foundational piece, but there's a lot of evidence that guys like Paolo Banchero, Cooper Flag, Zion Williamson, Cam Boozer have paved the way at Duke for doing what he wants to do as a one and done and a program that fits that. There is going to be more and more people that follow the pathway laid out by Koa Pete, saying, you know what, you can play winning basketball, be featured here, and not hurt your draft stock by having bad games. You can have a bad game in a marquee game because you're going to get a ton of them, and you're going to be great in a lot of them, and you're going to have the freedom to impact this game, and you're going to be taught how to play basketball the right way. That's what Koa Pete is teaching, and he is allowing for Tommy Lloyd to become a blue blood in the recruiting market in Tucson and make them a factor for all of these five stars. Now, let me tell you who is in Branch's recruiting process and how this has developed. So the reclassification has happened for Branch. And I realized I said Brian Branch. That was a total mind slip. It is Bruce Branch III. As I was talking, I was like, man, I said something silly. Anyway, Bruce Branch III. And he's the number 2 ranked player in the 2027 class. And he announced the other day that he's reclassified into the 2026 class. He's going to graduate from Prolific Prep, which is in Florida, and he'll do so in the spring and be able to play college basketball next fall, meaning that he could be the replacement for Koa Pete should Koa Pete go pro. He said, and I quote, I believe in my ability. I'm confident I can do this. He told that to ESPN. I've been playing up my whole life, and I'm not going to let anyone outwork me. I remember when I was in the first grade playing against third graders, I got pushed down, I got back up. And he has the likes of Kentucky, Kansas, Louisville, USC, BYU, the aforementioned, of course, Arizona Wildcats, Houston and Miami, all in pursuit. He said the decision is coming in the spring. And you look at the way that these teams have built their roster, who has previously been recruited and committed to these different schools. And Branch is 17 right now, meaning he'll be eligible for the 27 draft following his reclassification because he'll be 18 just in time. And that is a class that's not as talented as this class or the following class. So he's positioning himself to potentially be a number 1 pick. And there have been track record for success at Arizona of having number 1 picks from going to school in Tucson. That's DeAndre Ayton. There has been success at a position like he plays and going to Tucson. You can look at Koa Pete. You can look at the growth of other forwards, and there is a real world, in my opinion, based on the way that the recruitment has unfolded for other teams in terms of what they've prioritized in the other class that was 2026, not 2027, where Branch was, where he was the number 2 pick. Other guys, other teams have looked at other guys to fill their spots. Arizona, you guys asked the question, and it's a good question, of what will they do after not getting Cam Williams? Well, many teams have filled out their, allocated, hey, we want this guy. We're going to pay this amount to get this guy, and also pay this amount of attention to X recruit and tell them this is going to be a role. Arizona has that role vacated for him and a possibility to land a 5-star recruit. I truly believe that. And I think that it's very difficult to look at what he did and at 6'7" already, 7'2" wingspan, and just speed and explosiveness, more of a wing than a power forward, but you can have this versatility and this effectiveness because Arizona has a pipeline to the pros and is a proven top 10 offense in college basketball, one that resembles the way the NBA is played. And I think with that recruiting pitch in mind, compared to the other rosters that are assembled for the other teams competing for his services, Arizona should have an inside track. We'll have more discussion on this. This is speculative, I fully admit. But in thinking about this and breaking down the other teams, researching their recruitment, you never know what exactly is going to weigh the most. Arizona has at least a top 3 pitch for Branch to land his services. Well, thank you guys for tuning in. Always means a ton to me. Arizona moves to 6-0, and that is big. And we'll see if they can claim the number 1 spot soon. May take a loss for Purdue to get there. That doesn't matter a ton. The recruitment does. And what really matters is Brayden Burries and Ivan Karchenkov and Dwayne Aristotle breaking out. They'll thank you for supporting them. And I'll thank you for making Locked On Wildcats your first listen today. For your second listen, check out Locked On Big 12. Drake Toll breaks down the most exciting conference in college sports, from the rivalries to the championships and every game in between. Find Locked On Big 12 on YouTube or wherever you listen to your podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.